So, Jon, thank you for joining me here at African Pilot. I'm super excited. The countdown has started. The program, I believe, is done. What are the highlights?
Yeah, so the program is pretty much there. We're about 95% completed. The first day is dedicated to finance and leasing. So it's much more for the airlines of Africa to come and meet with the lessors, with the banks, with the original equipment manufacturers, and look at what actually is out there in the market and what their challenges are, and obviously put these people together so we can overcome that, get some new aircraft and some used aircraft into the market, and then obviously get those deployed over the next couple of days, which is where AviaDev really starts with the one-to-one meetings between the airlines and the airports that come. What we're going to do is we're going to start with the state of the industry. So our partners at ACC are going to kind of take a zoom out look and say, look, this is what's happening in Africa at the moment from a leasing perspective. This is where you can access aircraft. This is where there are deals to be done. This is where deals are being done. And they'll be looking both at the straight up sort of dry leasing and also the ACMI and the wet leasing market as well, which has seen a big growth over the last few years. And this is a part of the market we've never actually dealt with directly before, but we're growing in terms of the number of lessors, banks, airlines that actually want to have these conversations. And AviaDev being a place where aviation is developed and where the business of aviation is done, it felt like the perfect fit to put the leasing together with the route development. So we'll then move from that into where is the money coming from. So that's all about how are we going to finance this? So we'll have representatives from the Exim Bank of the US that provide finance for Boeing aircraft, for example. AFRA will be on that at a Secretary General level. We'll have Investec, the local bank, and they'll be looking at where are the sources of funding, how can we access those. Then we're going to do a really exciting session for Embraer, all about the E2 coming into Airlink in South Africa. So we're going to bring together the lessor, the OEM, and of course the operator to talk about how did that deal come about, because this is something that's been in discussion for over a decade, right, basically. So it's really exciting. Then we'll look at risk, and then we will finish with how do we do some fleet planning and how do we use data to plan our fleet in a world that is so turbulent. And that basically is the finance forum. We only do content in the mornings with AviaDev, so we're quite unique in our format. Content in the mornings. We don't then bring people back into a dark, dusty room after lunch, and our rooms are not dark or dusty. We make it into a real show, and we're investing very heavily in the staging, in the audio-visual experience. We want people to really feel part of the show. So it's the morning of the Wednesday, and then we have the main event on the Thursday and Friday as well. And that's a format that's worked for us really well.
The leasing side of things and the financing. It has become a very big topic in Africa, I believe. AFRA recently announced their, do you call it, partnership with African Development Bank, the many billions that they're talking about in terms of providing assistance to airlines and the aviation sector in Africa. What do you think will really be the game changer for the aviation sector in Africa in terms of leasing? I mean, you have enough experience to give some opinion on it.
Well, actually, it's quite new to me, the whole sort of finance and leasing. It's something I've been learning over the last year or so because, of course, it's so closely aligned to what my specialist subject is, which is route development. So, one without the other doesn't exist. And it's absolutely fascinating. I mean, the truth is there is money there. The issue is, how do you access the money? Will somebody lend you the money? And secondly, will they lend it at terms that are agreeable? Like, I can lend you $1 million, but if it's 25% interest, you're not going to, paying that back is just a crazy setup that you're going to say, I can't take that on because my, what I would have to return on that asset and how I'm going to deploy that has to generate over 25% in return, which is pretty optimistic. So it's about trying to find the right partner that can provide the finance. Now that could be a private bank. What we find is that the private banks obviously, have less of a risk appetite because they're not there to do development. But this is what's so exciting about African Development Bank. It has it in the name. It is a development bank, so it should be by nature more have a bigger risk appetite to say, okay, we'll take a chance on some of these second tier airlines. With all due respect, most banks and most institutions will lend Ethiopian Airlines after 80 years of successful operation as much money as they want within reason. But it's the startups, it's the tier 2 airlines that have got opportunity. And that's why we're doing sessions. And it's not for us to say how this is going to work out, but it's putting the right people in the room. And we have this really interesting session in the middle of the day, which is all about how do you make yourself less risky? How can you show that you can get better terms by, look, we operate safely, we're making profit, etc. And obviously communicate that to whoever it is that's lending you the money or providing the insurance, so that your operating costs and your repayments can go down, and then you can obviously make money and be a sustainable operation. So that's what it's all about. It's about having these multiple sources of finance. Even having the Exim Bank of the US, we've never had them at the event before, but they are actually providing financing for Boeing aircraft coming out of the US into Africa. They're obviously interested to do it because they're coming to Botswana. So it's about sitting down with them and saying, how do we make ourselves as good a bet as possible for you to be able to give us some credit and give us some financing to purchase your aircraft? And that's what's exciting, and why I think AviaDev is a natural home for this, because we're not aligned just to private banks or to development banks or to Exim export credit agencies. We can be a platform for all of them to come and meet the operators.
So that's what I really like. It's like OEM agnostic, and not just the OEMs, it's the finance. Everybody can have their input without it being a pressurized environment. Your event taking place in Botswana. Botswana itself is going through like an interesting phase in terms of their airline and their airports. I'm assuming we're going to get some input from the host country as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. What they created a year or so ago is they created something called Botswana Air Access, and they are the team that actually bid for AviaDev to take place in Gaborone. And that's what we love when we get a bidding party, is that it's a consortium. It's not just the Civil Aviation Authority, but it is the tourism board, it is private sector, combined in collaborative approach, saying as a government, as a country, we see the need to improve air access. And the reason I bring that up is that an airline like Air Botswana understands its role within that ecosystem. It knows in its current situation, it's not going to be able to provide international connectivity to London from Botswana or to other even long distance parts of Africa. So what it's got to do is understand its place in developing Botswana domestically and regionally, and work with partners that it can then plug into to provide that connectivity. And that's what AviaDev does too. So Air Botswana are very much coming to look at partnerships, and also they have new leadership. The CEO of the CAA has now moved over to Air Botswana. So he will be talking about what is the new strategic plan for the airline. And then, of course, we'll also have the CAA there as kind of an anchor point. We'll have the Investment and Trade Commission as well. So they play a big part in, of course, showing why it's an attractive environment to invest in. And the tourism operators tourism is a huge part of the economy, and Botswana has established itself as probably, in terms of price point and quality of experience, one of the premier safari destinations in the world. So, it's got a lot to offer, and all of the stakeholders are pulling in the same direction. So we see this as being the best opportunity. And what we say to our hosts is, instead of you traveling around the world meeting airlines and saying, let me show you how beautiful Botswana is, we can give you that opportunity for you to host them in country and actually illustrate it to them. And then they can go and say, right, we need to be flying here. We didn't realize how big the opportunity is. And if you can't convince them off that, I'm not sure what else you can do, outside of providing incentives, which of course is another thing that will be discussed too. So for us, it's all about providing the platform for Botswana to get the benefit. But make no mistake, this is an African event. This is not just a Botswana-centric event and only talking about situations and the impact on Botswana, but it's Botswana's place within that ecosystem.
You've got a number of airlines coming through to the event.
Yeah, we're going to have a record attendance already. So we're sort of 7 weeks out from the event, but we've got over 50 airlines registered and over 110 delegates from those 50 airlines. And what we find is, from a role perspective, this is the C-level So in the smaller airlines, CEOs, CCOs, we also in the larger airlines, they're heads of fleet planning, they're heads of network planning, they're heads of commercial. It's that kind of role that we're looking at bringing. And in terms of the airlines that we attract, to illustrate once again, because we're not membership driven and we're private sector and we're a forum, we're a platform. If you are an airline that is operating aircraft and to, from and within Africa, you are welcome to AviaDev. So whether you have one aircraft or you have 150 or 600 or whatever, everything in between, you're very welcome. You'll be treated exactly the same. So when you look at the list of the 50 plus airlines, we have very niche but amazing operators. Some of the safari operators in Tanzania, like Oric. We've got FlightLink, who operate ATR 72s. And then you've got your regional operators like the ProFlight Zambias of this world, the Fly Namibias, etc. And then some of the big regional players, big team from Airlink coming. And then we've got the big Pan-African Ethiopian team, the Kenya Airways team, etc. And I know I'm missing so many airlines out, so this isn't to mention anyone else. But a big part for us has also been the internationals and the intercontinentals, because as I said earlier, Africa, yes, needs to connect itself better, but it relies on international feed, with about 80% of travelers arriving in Africa on a non-African airline. We're not going to change that overnight. It's something that absolutely, if we get strong domestic and regional airlines, they can grow into the wide body market. But learn to walk before you can run kind of thing, and work with those partners in the interim. So we have a huge delegation from the Lufthansa group. All of the airlines are represented there. So Discover, Edelweiss, Swiss, Lufthansa Mainline, etc. And then we've got Qatar Airways, we've got Etihad for the first time, we've got Air France, KLM, and more to come. Air Asia even are coming this year. So we're very much agnostic, and what we want to do is we want to say to those airlines, if you are serious about Africa, you need to come to Africa. Don't wait to for Africa to come to you. Come to Africa, meet Africa, and understand the opportunity. It's easy to write it off when you're sat in a boardroom outside of the continent. I'm a passionate believer that this is the next frontier. I think we're all aware of that. So, for me, this is the opportunity.
Absolutely. I've had a look at the list of speakers. You've got some really great speakers. Any particular standouts you're excited about, you want to talk about?
Well, yeah, I mean, look, all of them are amazing. We work really hard to pick the best speakers. And the way that we do this is we actually have an advisory board. So I don't sit in a dark room and come up with the program. We actually meet in December and we sit down as a big group. There's about 20 of us on the advisory board, spanning all types of different experiences and different roles. And we come together and say, right, what are the burning issues we need to discuss this year? What should be the focus? And then we get some ideas who should be the speakers. We love to start with a real bang. So we're bringing in Daniel Silk, who's a brilliant TV commentator and economist down there in South Africa, who's always on the TV. He does these amazing presentations that make people laugh, but also gives the macroeconomic situation about what's happening with the oil price, with the geopolitics, and it really sets the scene instead of diving straight into the nitty-gritty of the industry. Then we move to our CEO panel. So yeah, we have De Villiers Engelbrecht coming for the first time in his new role as CEO of Airlink. We have TAG coming at CCO level with Miguel, and the new group CEO of FastJet, which is an airline that has fascinated me since its inception 15 years ago. We have those kind of speakers from a C-level, and then we've also got two amazing reports that are premiered at AviaDev, which are all about where are the opportunities. So we have an unserved routes report from Airbus, which is all predominantly focused on where are the biggest opportunities from outside of Africa into Africa. What are the top 10 routes? And we do this as a premiere every single year. This will be the third year of doing that. And we then, on the Friday, we work with Embraer, looking more at the regional market in Africa. What are the routes that are unserved that have the biggest potential with them as well? So those are always standout sessions because, of course, it's completely fresh. It is literally hot off the press. People want to know what is happening. There'll be a deep dive into technology as well. We're going to look at fuel supply, which is super interesting in the current environment. And hopefully by June, a lot of that will be solved, or at least we'll have some sort of workaround for that. And then our final panel on the first day is all about the international market. So it will follow on nicely from what Airbus are doing. And on that panel, we'll have Virgin, we'll have Discover, which is part of Lufthansa. We actually have Washington Dulles Airport coming on board this year as a big sponsor of the event and a partner. Gatwick will be on that panel as well, so they're big into Africa, and ASCI from West Africa too. So day one, we've got some incredible speakers, and what we like to do is meld that association partnership, because we'll have people on the ground from IATA, from AFRA, from ARSA, from BARSA, etc. And they're there to hear from their members. So we do have that side of it. We're not ignoring that side, but really we want to hear from the executives making the decisions and making the case to the airlines as to why they should fly.
Absolutely. And I'm quite excited and looking forward to seeing the route map. I think I've read the first one from Embraer last year. I found it fascinating. So I'm quite looking forward to seeing how they've updated or what's changed. Next in the planning phase, before I speak to you again, what's the next milestone?
The big focus turns to organising the diaries. All of our airline attendees, but also our sponsors and our airports that attend, is ahead of the AviaDev event in June. We have actually built a piece of software where they can log in with like a shopping list, and they can pick from there who they want to meet at the conference. And then we facilitate those meetings. So they might say, right, I want to meet the X airline is my number one priority. And then we will run that system before the event, and we'll match those up, and we'll send them a diary to say at 2:00, you're meeting X airline at this location, be it at your stand. So it's quite labor intensive. It's very bespoke in that respect, and it's also very unique to offer that kind of targeted networking. And that doesn't mean those who are coming without a diary will be left out. There'll be lots of informal networking, lots of meetings going on the side. But we deliver about 1,500 meetings. It will be more than that this year over the 2 afternoons of the conference on the Thursday and the Friday. And these are the meetings that lead to the new routes, lead to the deals. And we know they are leading to deals, and we know they are leading to routes, because obviously we're getting that feedback from our attendees, and they're voting with their feet by coming back every year. And I would advise everybody to go and look at the agenda, because we've got things like Aaron Munyetsi from ARSA is going to be the recipient of our Lifetime Achievement Award. So instead of hearing him as a moderator, you're actually going to hear his life and times, the story of Aaron from being a kid, how he got into aviation, some of his greatest achievements. He'll talk about his family. It's a completely different setup to what maybe people will have seen and from him over time. Debating access to markets, we'll do a handover ceremony, we'll get the next generation involved, we'll do a morning run in the stadium in Botswana. There's just so much that we're going to be delivering over those 3 days. So, pack their running shoes and get ready basically for a really busy few days, and you'll leave with so many friends and contacts. And that's the final thing I wanted to say on this element, which is, we keep the number to 500 delegates so that we know that we can deliver a quality of experience. This is not an expo. This is a B2B event for the right people, and we're very proud that we bring the right people and we get the results.
Fantastic, Jon. I am, again, super excited. I can't wait to be there. I look forward to touching base with you just before the event so that you can give a final overview and before we all meet up with our running shoes in Botswana for AviaDev 2026.